Hello, I'm Ethan Chazen, a New York-based organization development coach, and this video is part of an ongoing program that I've initiated on my YouTube channel to talk about organizations that are grappling with issues around building an amazing workplace culture and really focusing on employees to the extent that they can unleash their people's untapped potential. And today's program is dedicated to a company, Zoom Video Communications, that recently announced that it was intending to do away with a department, a division of its company with diversity, equity, and inclusion employees. So they've announced that they're going to terminate the employment of those employees. Don't know exactly how many people we're talking about right now, but it's part of a recent announcement of employee layoffs at Zoom. And it's really interesting in that it reflects in corporate America a shift in mindset about diversity, equity, inclusion efforts. The company has said that they're going to continue to create a culture of inclusion, but they're going to go the route of hiring external consultants to come in and focus on engaging all of the company's employees in this realm of inclusion and belonging. So if you kind of look about the recent history on diversity, equity, inclusion, Zoom is like many other companies going back to 2020 and the George Floyd murder by Minneapolis police officers. They initiated or implemented a formal diversity, equity, and inclusion division that they filled with staff with backgrounds in diversity, equity, and inclusion. So now, fast forward, the team at Zoom is going to be disbanded, and this really is part of a broader retreat in the area of corporate America in terms of revisiting this thing of diversity, equity, inclusion. And it's really going on across corporate America as we look at conservative groups in the United States who are looking to intensify their attacks on diversity, equity, inclusion. And so if we go back to history, recent history, just the past few years, the Supreme Court's ruling where they disallowed or they banned the application of affirmative action metrics to be applied in admission standards, even though that wasn't directly related to corporate America, that emboldened organizations who are hell-bent on scaling back or doing away with diversity, equity, inclusion as a process. So you're seeing these conservative groups attack companies from McDonald's to American Airlines to other organizations that have these formal programs. So here's what I would say. To the extent that diversity, equity, and inclusion is merely something that an organization says, yeah, we know that we kind of have to do this. Let's just check it off the list of things that are being forced upon us. Those are the kinds of approaches that are doomed for failure anyway. So I'm all for not doing that approach. But if we think of diversity, equity, inclusion, more along the lines of what I often coach my clients is to broaden the scope of that to, instead of just D, E, and I, the letter B of belonging. So how do we create a workforce that has the broadest potential representation, but we focus on performance? So instead of mandating these kind of artificial constructs around certain number of employees who fit this ethnicity, this gender, to come up with arbitrary diversity metrics, sure, we want the broadest potential representation because every person knows that in organizations have the broadest workforce with the broadest range of background, experience, culture, upbringing, values, there is significant measurable positive impact to the organization. So we know this, but the notion of, well, I know that diversity, equity, inclusion sounds like just we're giving lip service to it. Of course, we want the broadest range. And of course, we're going to do this based on a meritocracy of we're going to find the people who are the most successful in their roles. I would argue that there's still a need to be sensitive to the underpinnings of what diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging were intended for, was many organizations, senior leadership teams aren't diverse. So when they say, oh, we're going to apply this kind of approach anyway, they have blind spots. They have subconscious bias. They have an inability to think from the most expansive diversity, inclusion, and equity perspective, right? So there was always an argument that if an organization wanted to reap the benefits, the reward of being diverse, of having a diverse and equitable and inclusive workforce culture, that of course you want to kind of think about it differently. So here's my guidance on diversity, equity, inclusion. And I think it's interesting that Zoom has already said they're going to focus on all employees in terms of impact with regard to encouraging them or having them have a more inclusive workplace. It remains to be seen what that will actually entail. But again, we want those of us who are in the field of culture transformation, I've been dedicated to this for 15 years, is an organization to fundamentally think up, down, across, in and out. Do you have, for every individual, the broadest representation of the people who you're going to need now and in the future to navigate a course of success across very turbulent times? How do you do that? You do what I call a human capital audit. You look at every individual in every role and you say, do we have in our organization, whether you're 5 employees or 50,000, the right people in the right role to achieve success now, but in the future? So it means thinking beyond roles and responsibilities of each employee. It means their background. I said this earlier, but I'll repeat it again. Their background, education, upbringing, culture, language proficiency, their values, all of the geographic, demographic, psychographic values and lifestyle. We want to apply the broadest set of metrics to look at the totality of what each employee can bring to the table. And then we start to do it on a team basis. After we look at the individual basis, we look at our teams in functional departments, marketing, sales, finance, R&D. We look how teams across functions interact. We look up and down the 3 levels of your organization. We look at the interactions in and out. Internally, you have your stakeholders of employees, but externally, you have your contract workers, vendors, clients, partners, suppliers, government regulatory agencies, all of those groups of individuals who interact with your organization. So I hope this was helpful. Stay tuned. It is a massive battle going on right now in corporate America for the heart and soul of the American enterprise, in terms of those organizations who are trying to use initiatives such as DE&I to create a more equitable and inclusive workplace, and those external influencers who are trying to minimize, reduce, or do away with that altogether. If you like this video, please drop a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and come back frequently, as I am going to be dedicated to looking at other organizations that are struggling with and succeeding at building amazing workplace cultures. Thank you.